Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. Today we're checking out a brand new small form factor case from Streacom. It's called the DA6 XL. It's an open frame case. Let's go. Let's start off with panel removal. Hang on a second. There are no panels. That was a really lame gag. This is an open frame case. This is the brand new Streacom DA6 XL. Now there is a non-XL variant. The main difference between this and the non-XL variant is this one is designed for these big old 40 series GPUs. And as we're about to find out, not everything is as it seems with fitting a 40 series GPU in here, but let's just take a bit of a closer look at everything to do with this case. So obviously there's no panels to remove here. This case supports ITX, well, mini ITX motherboards only. And it is actually looking to be quite easy to build in. I'm gonna probably eat my words with saying that because I haven't built it yet. However, let's take a closer look at everything that makes this new case from Streacom tick. There's a few ways to install motherboards as well. You can go through the front of the case or you can go through the side. I would probably recommend going through the side because this is the stock position for this bar here, and with any motherboard it's really going to fit unless you're using an air cooler, which you would go in through the front and drop this bar down to the bottom. Now you may have noticed these bars along the edge of the case here. Now this is actually the mounting system for the entire case. So things like fans, radiators, power supplies and whatnot. And yeah, basically everything just mounts to these bars. They're quite easily movable. They've got these little screws. We'll just loosen them just to show you how this works quite quickly. They've got little bits of rubber on them to give them a bit of grip as well. And basically these just slide up and down, and they can be completely removed as well because essentially they're just these metal hooks with the rubber to grab them, as I mentioned previously. They also have these clever little machined pieces of metal that thread the bits of metal through, and it turns them into the system we're seeing here. There's one fitting on each end and two rods. Speaking of fans and radiator mounting with this mounting system, the DA6 XL and the DA6 both support up to 280mm radiators. So you can do custom loops if you like as well, but I think we might just use a regular old liquid cooler for this build. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use a 240 or 280 at this point in filming, but up to 280 up the front here. For power supply mounting, you can actually move it around. So you've got a few options. You can do SFX or SFXL. You can move the brackets around to do a full ATX power supply as well. But just be aware though, you've got a maximum width, which I'll show on the screen, which I can't remember what it is from the top of my head. But yeah, you'll just have to make sure you measure everything when you're building in a case like this, because even though it is open, you want to keep everything in the confines of the frame itself. This is where the DA6 XL kind of gets a little bit interesting. Now, GPU fitment is a bit interesting here. So whatever the maximum GPU length is, 340,583,627 is the maximum length because this is an open frame case, right? Realistically, there is no maximum size. However, there is a maximum size because you've got this top plate. I was just joking, guys. Realistically, your maximum GPU length is 358mm, not whatever that random number was that I spat out before, but this is actually where it gets tricky. So the XL version was really designed to allow us to install these big 40 series GPUs. And as you can see, with the front bars removed, yeah, the 40 series GPU should technically fit. However, I did encounter one baby little issue. Essentially what I've discovered is this gets in the way, and first of all, I didn't think it was going to fit at all. However, it does have one handy trick up its sleeve for wider GPUs because that's something that we're seeing a bit of a trend with now. The whole mounting solution for the PCIe cards on the bottom of the case has these 4 screws here. We can actually adjust the offset of the GPU. Now this will work for most really wide GPUs, maybe except for the one that we've got shown here, because this GPU, which is the 4090 Tough Gaming from ASUS, is exceptionally wide. Now what I think we need to do to get this to work is I'll need to remove the power connector on the bottom of the case, put the GPU in, and then reattach the power connector. And I think that is probably the recommended way to do it anyway. There isn't much documentation with this case, but you know, it is what it is, and we'll find out together. It's got this little movable cable raceway here that you can use with your tweezers, cable ties. And these are reusable cable ties. So once you do them up, they've got little buttons you can press on them to release them, which is quite handy. I think every case should come with a set of these. For internal case wiring, we've got the power connector. This plugs into your power supply that you install. There is the LED connections, there's the power button connector, and a USB 3.2 Type A connector, which is actually for Type C in this case. The front panel has a couple other tricks up its sleeve too. Everything for the front panel, or let's call it the under panel, is removable here, and it's modular. So you can purchase different modules. Say for instance, you wanted a Type A port, you could purchase a Type A port to put in there. This has got the Type C port in there already. This is the combined power and LED light here. We've actually got another bit of kit here which will allow us to change this out to something very cool, right? And that is a power button that is also a fingerprint reader. It's got a biometric scanner. So if you wanted to unlock your PC with Windows Hello, you just put your finger underneath the case and it would unlock. How cool is that? That's everything you need to know about the Streacom DA6 XL for now. This is one of those cases where we actually need to build in it to find out if and what will actually work in a chassis like this. Yeah, it's open air, but as far as I can see so far, it does have quite a few quirks that are gonna make this interesting. So let's do a build thing.
Comes around, yeah. Comes around, comes around.
All right, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the build in the Streacom DA6 XL. Now, as you probably saw towards the build section of the video, you would have noticed that I had to swap out the GPU. Now, there's a couple reasons why we had to do that. The first one is Obviously, the GPU in this case doesn't really technically fit too well. I had to remove the power block where you plug in the power cable on the bottom of the case to make that fit and then kind of reattach it, and it was sitting on a bit of a disgusting angle, which made it not so elegant, and it didn't do this elegant case any type of justice. The other reason why I swapped out the 4090 is because I'm using this brand new Li & Li power supply. It's called the SP850, and it's got a 12-pin power connector that is the same as the 16-pin, but it doesn't have the 4 sense wires for the rest of the power delivery for that cable. So yes, it technically does send juice to the GPU, but it doesn't send those sensing signals to let the GPU know that it's actually got power, so the 4090 doesn't power up. Now, if it's a 30 series Founders card, it works no problem, as well as the 3090 Ti, even the partner cards. It still has the spots for those sense wires, but they turn on. But yeah, it's odd that it doesn't work, but also I should have half expected it. So that one is completely on me. So what I decided to do is swap it out for the 7900 XTX. And speaking of, let's take a look at the thermals with the hardware that I chose here. Now, this is an open frame case. Basically, what we're gonna see is the same thermals that we're gonna see on an open air test bench because it is so open. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is a lot of people will say, why have you got the fan set to exhaust through the radiator out the front? Well, the way this works is, and we saw this with the Meshlicious as well, is if you have the fan set to this orientation, it pulls air in from the sides and pushes it out the front. So you're actually getting the coolest air from the sides of the case and pushing it out the front, rather than just spilling hot air into the case and that exhausting out the side. That way you're not heating up the components. Now, usually this wouldn't be a problem with the case like that in that configuration. However, because everything is so close together, you will just heat up everything. So yeah, that's that. As far as all of the parts that I use for this build, I'll put a PCPartPicker list down below in the description so you can check that out. I'm not going to talk about it in the video anymore because we do the little cards at the top that just show everything to make your life a little bit easier. Now, there's a couple things that I need to talk about with the DA6 XL. Obviously, that power block thing at the bottom of the case is not ideal if you're using a wide GPU. They don't actually talk about using wider GPUs with this case. There's no mention of any type of width specification for GPUs, only length. So as far as a comment I have for Streacom, I think case manufacturers need to start having measurements for width of GPUs, not just length, for people who are buying these new 40 series cards. There's other things to consider as well. It's not just the width, it's also if it's using that 12-volt high power connector, you need additional width so the cable doesn't bend and potentially cause some issues with it not plugging in correctly. So yeah, just a couple little notes there for Streacom. One other big note about this case that I didn't like, and I thought it was really, really bizarre, and that's actually regarding the power connector again, is the hole isn't quite big enough for every power cable. What I mean by that is some power cables have a wider bit to plug them in. So if you've already got an existing power cable you're going to be using, or you've bought a power supply with a cable that isn't as slim as it should be, you're gonna have problems plugging it in. And that's why with the setup that I've got here showing it now, I actually unscrewed all of that and kind of made it loose and plugged it in, because the power cable that I've got wired into the table has that wider profile. But I've never seen this before, like not even on one single occasion. And if I'm being honest, it's a little bit of an oversight from Streacom. They could have easily made the hole a little bit bigger. I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 mils around the edge of that hole, and the whole thing would have been fine. You can't even file it out and make it bigger yourself because the materials of this case are just so solid. And that's the last thing I wanted to talk about. The build quality, and this is a very, very important thing here. The build quality of this case is absolutely exceptional. They've done an excellent job with this case. There's another thing that I don't like, but I get it, right? Because this case isn't for everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. The little bar system for adjusting things, I don't like that. It's the only way they can do it. I get it, but I personally don't like it. It's a little bit fiddly and I get frustrated really easily. So I'm there like being an idiot and trying to figure it all out, and it's like kind of slipping out and whatnot, but I've got it all to work, as you can see. It's all good. A couple other things to mention as well, not just the GPU clearance, it's overall clearance for everything. Obviously, we put as many measurements as we can on screen for those parts of the video when we're talking about it. The main issue I have is with actually radiator fitment. It is very, very tight, and I know the case supports 280mm radiators, and I can see how that works, but routing some AIOs with tubes can be a bit of an issue here. I expected it to be like this. I knew it was going to go this way. This is how all of these small form factor cases are, but it's kind of just interesting to see it done a different way. And it works, but it can be fiddly, but you know what you're getting yourself into if you're building small form factor, ladies and gents. That's just how it is. You have to accept it. That leads me into the last thing with this open frame case from Streacom, the price. If you're interested in the Streacom DA6 XL, it's going for around 159 US dollars or around 269 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. This case has been out for a little while now, but I did want to show it to you guys because you might not have seen it. And in terms of Streacom cases, this is actually on the cheaper end of the spectrum for Streacom cases. They're a very well-crafted, bespoke case manufacturer, and sometimes the cases are a bit more expensive, but you know, for a small form factor case like this, less is more, right? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this different type of video because it's been a while since we've done a nice small form factor case. And if you like this video, ladies and gents, do us the absolute favor of hitting subscribe, hitting the like button if you like the music you heard here. I make all the music. It's available by clicking that join button right down there, down below. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I am your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek, we seek, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.